Welcome to the DVB Newsroom. I'm Bureau Chief Myat. In our newsroom today is Igor Blazevic. Igor is very well known as a European human rights campaigner and a founder and long-time director of One World Film Festival, the Europe's biggest human rights film festival, and also founder of People in Need Foundation.
It's my real pleasure and honor as well to share how I understand the current dynamics in Myanmar.
And you've been traveling a lot during this day, especially in your visit in Thailand, and you met many of your friends who are part of Spring Revolution. So I'd like to ask, what did you learn from them? I would like you to share with us. And how do you see the current main trends in Spring Revolution?
So, in a certain way, since the coup, we are constantly in a critical moment. So that the first critical moment has been whether people en masse will join the protests, and people have done that. Then the next critical moment has been when the military has applied brutal crackdown against the non-armed civilian protests, whether people will find the courage and find a new way how to oppose junta. People have done that. So in that sense, it's impossible to say, oh, this is especially critical moment, but on the other side, it is a critical moment. Sit in their fortress and try to inflict as big pain on the civilian population as they can. And they are doing it through the military operation, which are targeting primarily civilians, and they are doing it through the hyperinflation, they are doing it through the squeezing and capturing everything what is resource in a country and putting it into the war of terror against the civilian population. So it's hard to endure that kind of the brutality. But on the other side, the resistance, and when I say resistance, I both mean the civic resistance and the armed resistance, not only successfully defending themselves and are not defeated, but they are starting more and more to squeeze junta into the more and more narrow space, politically, territorially, economically, militarily. In this squeeze place, they are still strong, and they can inflict a lot of pain, but they cannot be in a control anymore. So we are now in a situation in which it's very, very important to continue this momentum of the ongoing pressure, and we need to change the perspective of the internationals, what's going on in Myanmar, because from the outside, there is a complete misunderstanding what is the reality in the country.
Amidst this very depressing situation and amidst international community's misunderstanding, what are the positive dynamic in this trend? What are the remaining strengths?
I see a number of the positive. One thing is the ongoing participation of the people. We still see people cannot take the streets in a mass numbers now, but people are finding many other ways how they are showing that they are rejecting the junta and that they are supporting the profound change in the country. So this level of the participation of the many thousands and hundreds of thousands people is something what is constantly fueling this stubborn, determined resistance. I'm in a contact with the many people in Myanmar. I will just kind of give one example. I have just recently met two CDM educators, but they have been also kind of in a certain level of the higher managerial position in an educational system of the Myanmar before the coup. Because they joined the protest, they lost their house. They have been forced to go and escape. They are spending their savings, what they have, to continue to escape and to be in hiding. But at the same time, they have organized 250 other educators across the Chin State, Sagaing, Magwe. And with these 250 educators, they are running incredible programs of the vocational training, vocational educations, which are educators on the ground are in the IDP camps in this semi-liberated territory, are helping people gain the skills which can strengthen the communities and which can create small income for them. So impressive. And then when we imagine that there are hundreds and thousands of the people in Myanmar who are in that way making a contribution through their civic resistance, through their armed resistance, this is impressive. This is really impressive. In the last 15 years, there has been probably 10 big uprisings of the people against the bad regimes in Hong Kong, in Belarus, in Venezuela, in Egypt, and in many, many other countries. All these uprisings have faced the brutal crackdowns, and after 3 to 6 months to 8 months, they have been crashed down. People gave up. People of the Myanmar have not only not given up, but they have succeeded to push significantly junta. So I think that we are in a situation that if we continue this pressure, there is a moment, we don't know when it will come, we don't know how it will come, but there is the moment when the military structure will implode from the bottom up.
We can see the junta is getting weaker and weaker. Do you see the weaknesses of the junta today, and what are their remaining strengths you see?
They are getting significantly weaker in a situation of their troops on the ground. They are simply stretched across the two big countries, which are stretched and exposed to the small but significant attacks by the many, many units. There are units, if they have been supposed to have 200, 250 soldiers. They don't have it now more than the 70. They can't recruit. And for the first time in a decades in Myanmar, these soldiers sitting now somewhere on the outposts are afraid. Until this revolution, they have never been afraid. They have had this confidence. They can go out, they can kill, they can rape, they can rob, they can burn, they can do whatever they want, and with a total impunity. Now, let's say, if they go out, they don't know whether they will come back. And this is psychologically changing the dynamic of between the resistance and between the junta. So this is their very, very weak point. The second thing is junta is running out of the hard cash. They can print money and create the inflation to make a pressure on the people, but they are running out of the cash. So these are the two main weaknesses on their side. What they have to try to survive. One thing is to inflict the pain on the civilian population and try to endure longer than the civilian population can. The second thing, to try to get legitimacy from the regional countries. They don't care about international world, but they care about India, China, Thailand, and few other ASEAN countries. So this will be now a significant push from their side to try to achieve certain acceptance during the Lao chairmanship, and we need to block that. We need to push that back. And the third thing, they will play with Aung San Suu Kyi to manipulate the mood in a population. And they have started to be better and better in using the hardship on our side, using the trauma on our side to insert the discord, disunity, to disagreement between us. So they are using a lot now social media to fuel, and the technology of the Russians, how to spread the polarization in society. So they are using it now to create a lot of quarrel between the different revolutionary forces, to outblow them, to break us psychologically in a moment when they can't defeat the resistance militarily anymore.
Yeah, I can see how they try their exit strategy from this kind of very chaotic situation. So if you look at the history after 1962, we have a series of revolution in like 1988, 2007, and we have so-called transition between 2010 and 2020, and we even have elected government for 5 years. But you know, now they just take over power again. So do you see the kind of scenario that our revolution will be kind of like back to the square scenario, or there will be another step forward?
Look, the Myanmar military had advantage until this time. They had advantage that in a certain way they have been able to pick up whom they fight in every single moment. So they have been able to always isolate a certain segment of the political and social forces who are in rebellion against them, and then crush them while making whatever ceasefire or making a certain corrupt deals or anything else with other stakeholders. So they have been very, very good in playing this game, almost never picking up fight against more than one opponent. This time, situation is completely different. Let's say this time the military has activated, or the junta and failed coup has activated very, very broad spectrum of the players who are fighting them. What is now critically important is we have I describe it in the following way. We have in a current struggle three sources of the legitimacy. One source of the legitimacy is coming from the 2020 elections, or we can go deeper, is coming from the popularity of the Aung San Suu Kyi among the broad swathes of the population of the country, or I can go deeper and say it's 30 years of the NLD being the symbol of the opposition to the junta. So this is one source of the legitimacy. Another source of the legitimacy is coming from the 70 years of the ethnic nationalities struggle for the liberation of them as ethnic groups. That kind of the legitimacy is autonomous legitimacy. It's coming from its own logic, from its own history. The third legitimacy is coming from the driving forces of the Spring Revolution. Because the Spring Revolution has been, at least in the first year, driven significantly by the new players, if we want. And now we have a little bit problem that we have a competition of whose legitimacy is the upper one. And we can't solve it. Nobody's legitimacy of these three is the upper one. What we need a clear consensus, agreement between these three sources of the legitimacy, of these three political and civic leadership coming from these three sources, to have a constantly something what I call minimum consensus. We don't need now that everybody agrees about everything, how Myanmar in future will look like, because we don't know whether that future will come. We need to secure that future. And to secure that future, we need a minimum consensus between these key three actors. And in order to defeat Min Aung Hlaing, to defeat junta, to remove them, that will make military weak. And let's say then we need to stop violence, stop war, stop terror against the civilian population, release political prisoners, let people come back to their villages, let people pick up the pieces of their life, bring economy back, bring a safety back, and then start the serious political discussions how the future should look like.
So how do you see these anti-genocide, such as their alliance building, trust and lack of trust, drafting transitional documents and roadmaps, and relation between armed and civil resistance, etc.? I
think that the dilemma, armed resistance or civic resistance, is a wrong dilemma. It's not either or. We need both. These are both. These are the complementary side on one unifying struggle. We can't defeat junta, brutal beast, with the civic resistance. That's why we need the armed resistance. At the same time, armed resistance alone cannot defeat the junta without the people's participation and without involvement of the many people who cannot pick up the arms but who can contribute in another way. So these are the complementary sides of one same struggle. When it comes to the question of the roadmap, do we need a roadmap? I usually say no, we need first to cut the supply roads which junta is bringing to their troops. Let's say it's much more important now to cut the roads than to create the roadmap. I don't think that we need in this moment roadmap. We need to kind of stop the terror which junta is waging against the civilian population, and we need to defeat them. I was recently talking with one of friend, American, I was even not aware of that, and he said me, you know, in an American Revolution, let's say we have been 10 years, 15 years in American Revolution, and only then we came to the drafting the American Constitution. No, to draft the Constitution is something what you need the level of the security. You need the level of the space for the serious political agreement. I don't think that we need it now. An attempt in such complicated situation like Myanmar, attempt to create now the Constitution is just triggering the disagreement between us. We don't need disagreement, we need agreement to defeat junta. So when it comes to the trust and question of the alliance, I'm describing it now, it's a half glass full. Yes, it's not full glass full. But when we know how complex Myanmar is, how burdened relations are with the grievances from the previous time, we should, you know, be realistic in expectation. Let's say. This half glass full has so far helped us sustain incredible struggle against the very, very dangerous opponent, and to significantly weaken it, has brought us to the situation when we can defeat it. So my advice is, let's kind of be proud and confident with a half glass full. Let's try with the wisdom to make it a little bit more full, and let's not despair and let's not panic that it's a not full glass full. What I'm seeing now a little bit tendencies because of the frustration. People are under huge pressure. So because of the frustration, people want things to happen suddenly, quickly, something like a big bang, which will suddenly solve everything. Let's say in a revolution, is in a wars, there are no big bangs. So things really take time. The processes are gradual. The struggles are hard. You have a successes. You have a setbacks. That's the reality of the hard struggle. If somebody looks, you know, Vietnam liberation struggle lasted 30 years. The peak of the anti-apartheid movement lasted 10 years. I don't say that this current struggle will last 10 years. I think it will be much shorter. But things take time. So for that reason, I think it's a very, very important now, if the glass is half glass full, that because of the anger that it's not full glass full, so that we are more quick, that we don't break the glass. Because now there are a lot of these kind of the mutual quarrels, who is to be blamed that we don't move forward with the transitional constitution or something like that, and these quarrels can break the glass, and then we don't have it neither half glass full. I personally think that the most important thing in this moment will be if the key stakeholders, and when I say key stakeholders, I mean NUG and K3C, Kachin, Karen, Chin Kareni, if they form the delegations and go, let's say, to the capital cities of the world to show that anti-junta movement is standing together. We need to change the perspective of the international community on what's going on in Myanmar.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that. There are many criticisms over the performance of the NUG government, and foreign observers often show their concern about the NUG government, whether they are ready to govern. So how do you see the capacity of the NUG in particular?
I think it's a very unfair criticism. So yes, let's say I will admit that there is limits of the capacity, which is understandable. Let's say if we understand under which conditions these people operate, if we understand how fragile is the consensus behind the creation of the NUG, I think that we just need to tolerate a certain kind of amount of the limited capacity. Internationals are, I think, using that as an excuse to hide that nobody from the international community has in any meaningful way helped the struggle of the Myanmar people against the brutal regime. So when somebody say there is no capacity in a NUG, I always respond, but how much resources you have put in a structure of the NUG, how much humanitarian aid you have put to the people who are on the resistance side. International community is currently not even providing humanitarian aid to the people who are on the half of the territory which resistance is now controlling. 80% of the aid money which is provided by the taxpayers in a US, Europe and few other countries, 80% of that aid is going to the territory which is under the control of the junta and is weaponized by the junta. So what I think international community should put the resources into the NUG structure, into the resistance, and not necessarily armed resources. There are many other resources, and then we can talk, let's say, where the capacity. If the NUG has the $1 billion which is sitting in a US, capacity will increase in 1 month. Capacity is not just about making a good PowerPoint presentation. Capacity is primarily about resources. Do you have them or you don't have them?
Yeah, you're right. You know, if we compare to the situation in the beginning of the Spring Revolution and now, people, I mean, especially people from Myanmar, a huge expectation over international community is getting decreased because they realize, they realize the reality. Yeah. And also I'd like to know your opinion on that. You know, what we can or cannot expect from the regional diplomatic processes such as ASEAN and our neighbors like Thailand, China, India and Bangladesh, and international actors.
So regional actors are important because the international actors, other beyond the region, do not really have interest and to get involved in Myanmar. There are many reasons for that, and we can talk about that, but profoundly the rest of the world has delegated the responsibility of on the ASEAN in order not to be blamed themselves. So, okay, ASEAN, it's your business. From the region, we cannot in this moment expect that the region will help and assist the democratic federalist resistance forces. They can do the harm, the region, and they cannot help. This is reality. This is a painful reality, but this is reality, and better to understand that. So what is our task? Our task is to prevent and push back and counter the effort from the region to re-legitimize junta. Because what the countries in the region would like, because they cannot imagine, they're not capable to imagine Myanmar without military and without junta. So they think that the military and junta are indispensable part of the solution. And then they want to facilitate some sort of the negotiations, some sort of the agreement, which we know it's not possible. It's not only because people will not accept it, but because junta does not want any agreement. Junta want to defeat people. Junta want only full victory at all costs. What we need really to block the certain countries in a region of doing harm. And once when we change reality on the ground, in a sense that I call them coalition of the willing of the forces which are opposing junta, who are fighting junta, when we change the reality on the ground so that we look as a more credible winner of the current struggle, that is the moment when both regional countries and the international community will start to take us seriously and will start to provide aid. In today's world, this is unfortunate, but this is a reality. In today's world, nobody comes to help you because you are a victim. You can bring, I don't know how many reports and testimonies about crimes which are committed on you. I said that will not motivate anybody, that will not trigger anybody to come to help you against the bully who is killing the people. What we need to look as a credible winner of the current struggle, and when that will be the perception, not necessarily reality, but perception, in that moment we will start to shift attitude of the regional and international players toward situation in Myanmar.
So the current struggle reached some stage, we can say that, but we see less and less space, as you also explained in the beginning. The junta has less and less space to play around. So they try to use the cards one by one, like Aung San Suu Kyi as a card, and showing international relationship with the countries and neighbors, and they're doing that, playing cards, one card or another. Do you think those efforts can make some opportunity for them?
We are in a undecided struggle. Struggle can go, I would say, 3 different ways, and we don't know which one it will be. One of these ways is not junta regaining control over country, but it's like something similar what happened in Syria when Assad in one moment has been almost defeated. Resistance was 25 kilometers far away from Damascus, but in that moment Russia jumped in and Iran jumped in, helped Assad significantly, and then he regained control and used extreme brutality to one by one defeat the resistance forces. Resistance forces in Syria made a terrible mistake. I said that they fragmented themselves into the many units which are fighting Assad and at the same time are quarreling between themselves, which has been a huge mistake. So in something similar can happen in Myanmar, unfortunately. But that will not finish in a junta controlling the whole country. That will finish in a junta controlling the part of the country, and the other parts of the country will have a, I call it, Wa type of the autonomy. There are certain parts of the Myanmar which junta will never ever anymore control. If the junta prevails, Myanmar will be broken in 5 to 7 territories, and one of them will be controlled by the military junta, and the rest will be controlled by the other armed groups, which will have their territory, have their legal and illegal businesses and so on. Not very pleasant space for the civilian population. The other opportunity, the other way, is that we keep current alliance, we keep a pressure on the military, and this pressure needs to be military pressure, financial pressure, through the sanctions, through the collective civic actions which we are creatively inventing, through the psychological warfare from our side, which are constantly beaming messages to the loyalists of the junta and to the soldier: don't defend these loser Min Aung Hlaing, abandon the sinking boat. And then in one moment there can be something what I call implosion of the military from the bottom up. Simply units will stop to follow the orders in a war which is a defeating war for them. So this is another possibility. If we go in that direction, we will need to have a wisdom to create the reasonable political agreement how the future country will look like.
Thank you so much, Igor. Unless you have the last word for the Myanmar people and any motivation you can leave.
All of us must admit and know in how hard situation we are. So I think a few things are very important. One thing is that we need to care one about another. We need constantly to encourage each other on a very private, very personal level, because every single of us and every single citizen of Myanmar is going through the huge pain, through the huge struggle. So taking care about one another is a very important to help us endure. The second thing is we should have a hope, because we are really in a situation that for the first time in the history of the post-independent Myanmar, we can remove the cancer which is eating that country and that people for ages. And Myanmar without military oppression can be a nice country, because it's a rich country, rich with the people, rich with the natural resources, rich with the size, and we can make a Myanmar better country. So we should have, let's say, this hope in a promised land, how we can make Myanmar so that we can go through the current hardship.
Thank you so much. You leave us with a very positive message.
Thank you very much.